Ba, 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 ba. All right, if you can tell by my cheesy intro, we're at Ironman Raceway, the final round of the Pro Motocross Championship. Private day on the 2025 CRF450R. This bike is all new, 70% new. Either way, new generation for the Honda 450. And yeah, if you watched our video a few weeks ago, we rode the Honda CRF450R, the new 2025 model. Yeah, that bike was redone as well. Almost all the same changes that you saw on that bike are going to be added to the 450 as well. So not normally that we get the 250 and the 450 in the same year being all new. Normally the 450 gets changed, and then a year or so later the 250 gets changed. But this year they went all out and they did both bikes in the same year. And really that stems from the race team, is what we're told. The race team guys were kind of talking about how the bike flexed a lot and was having some issues, and the HRC guys had said, try patching the frame here, here, and see how that works. And when the guys liked that, that's really what started this project. So if you look at Jet and Hunter's bikes, the 450s especially, from last year and this year, you'll see these added tabs on the frame. And that's because the AMA allows you to add material to the bike. You can't take material away from the frame or the swing arm, but you're allowed to add material. So you'll see these added patches on the frame. And then now, if you look at the frame side by side, you can see basically the same patches added to this, the production bike. Just obviously they're cleaned up, the welds are better. Yeah, that's kind of how it started. So then you take that, you have new shock mounts. So then you got to reroute the airbox. And then once you mess with the airbox, you got to mess with the exhaust and the ECU. So the engine is pretty similar to what it has been from 22, 3, 4 to now. It's pretty similar, but you are going to get a new airbox with a new air filter design. You're going to get new ECU and a longer header pipe to really extend that low end and then really smooth out the bike, the engine. There's no secret this bike is fast, the engine is fast, but controlling it and riding it smooth is kind of a different story. So that's been the big goal with this bike. I'll break down into a couple changes so you guys can hear kind of some of the official word and what the changes are. All right, so the 70% new frame really is designed around the head tube, the down tube, the side gussets, and a stiffer shock mount. And like I said, these are a lot of the same changes that you saw on Jet and Hunter's bikes. Now they're just added to the standard frame, so it's kind of beefed up. The back, these two spars down the side are pretty similar, but where the shock mounts is going to be a stiffer area, and that's a super crucial area of the bike. Once you start messing with the shock tower and how it mounts, it throws a ton of the G-forces differently through the frame. So you're going to get a different reaction just by having the shock mounted differently. With that shock mount, it actually comes from the top part of the frame and not the side panels or the subframe. It's off the main part of the frame now. So the Honda guys too said that they were messing with all the other different manufacturers, and they could put these frames, the suspension, all that stuff on a dyno that will simulate the race. It's crazy to see how the bike can twist and flex, and the fork tubes can twist and flex and everything. You don't see it on camera, you don't see it even in slow-mo, but when it's on its own, the way the bike is twisting is pretty insane. So they've said with the new shock mount and the new frame, you're gonna get 27% less flex in the rear end. Take that for what you will, 27%. Sounds like a lot. Can you feel it out on track? Maybe. But yeah, it's cool to see that they are testing the other bikes. Like we said in the other video with Trey Kennard, talking about the first look at the 2025 Honda, this frame is actually one of the softest frames, or was one of the softest frames, where we had felt that it was one of the stiffest and harshest. They actually say that it's the softest and bends the most. So this whole new generation is designed around it not bending as much and not flexing as much and staying straighter, more precise. That's kind of the goal of this frame. The fork tubes are also new. They're going to have a different shape to keep the rigidity up as well. Again, not to flex and bend so much. That's going to match up with the new triple clamps and axle, and all the front end is designed to, like I said, not have as much flex, not bow out, not twist, and just stay planted, have more front end grip. You're gonna have a new linkage, and that's really designed to keep the rear end up, have less pitching front to back, and just have a more planted feel. New front brake caliper as well. You're gonna have a new piston as well as seals. That's supposed to really improve the feel of the front brake, have less fading and less kind of overheating. New airbox, like we said, has a straighter intake, less air resistance. And then along with that, you got to have the ECU and the header and exhaust to match. So those are all kind of the engine changes and the frame changes. With all these new updates, the 2025 Honda CRF450R retails for an MSRP of $96.99. Now, you're also gonna see this bike is available in the Works Edition, the R Works Edition model, and that is gonna come in at $12,599. That bike has the full exhaust system, the graphics, the wheels, everything, all the extra goodies. It's a full race bike straight out of the factory. All right, enough with the updates and changes and everything. How is this bike out on track? Now, we're at Ironman Raceway today. I have always wanted to ride here, but you can see by my factory Works Edition umbrella, it's raining pretty hard. So we got out this morning before the rain came and it was awesome. Conditions were so cool, but the jumps here are humongous. They're probably some of the biggest jumps I've ever hit in my whole life. So to kind of feel the bike out for that made it a little bit difficult. And then with the rain kind of made it sticky and soft. So personally, the frame and stuff, I feel like it's a big improvement. I felt that with the 250R. I raced a 23R standard a few years ago, and oh my gosh, it just felt so twitchy and so jittery at high speed. And looking back, I should have had a stabilizer, I should have suspension, I should have all this stuff on it. But when I rode the 250 and now this bike has the same frame, it just feels so much more planted, so much more stable at high speed. It doesn't feel like the front end's really gonna dance out of your hands. It doesn't feel like you have to squeeze the bike so hard with your knees to keep it under control. That's something that I'm super pumped about. It's crazy that making the frame stiffer and making the forks stiffer can make the bike smoother all around. But yeah, I just felt more precise was my word from the 250. And I guess I told them today my word was sharp. It just felt like I could charge the inside, charge down the straightaway at speed, feeling stable, feeling good, and then go to the inside line without not sacrificing agility for stability. And that was a big thing for me. So I'm pumped on that change. The axle, the triple clamp, it's hard to tell, but the front end felt good and didn't feel like it was gonna get out from underneath me, and that's something that I felt was pretty good. Moving on to the motor, this bike is super solid and strong. I feel like the engine is not at fault here on the Honda. It felt smoother and just cleaner, I guess. I rode today in map 2 mainly, which is the smooth map, and then at the end of the day when it started getting slick and slippery, I put on the traction control. I personally think the smooth map, if you guys watch a bunch of my videos, you'll know that I always like to take that 450 and smooth it out, make it a little easier to ride, and that's just what the smooth map does. The standard map was pretty good, has good hit. It's just easier to ride than it has been. It's smoother from that mid, the low to mid, and then the mid to top still carries really good. Like second and third gear, I was surprised at how long I could ride second and third gear for. Just like out of the start straight, you can pull a lot farther. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to shift here, but I don't know, didn't have to. And so that was something cool. I think I rode second and third gear this whole track, hitting some of the bigger jumps in third gear. Yeah, I liked it. I put the traction control on. Is it necessary? I don't know. I think it inspires a little bit of confidence. I think maybe when I put it on too, I'm a little easier on the throttle. So makes it kind of a double-edged sword. And once you put it on, you're thinking about it more. So, but overall, it's just easier to ride. And I think that's the biggest thing. This bike, I remember in 2019, it had 60-something horsepower and it was just so hard to hold on to. And now I think it's pretty much the same engine package, just a lot more refined and smoother. If you're a guy who you want an easy to ride 450, I think that's gonna be this bike without sacrificing performance or speed. You're definitely not giving any of that up. Suspension's been a big talking point today. A lot of guys are saying that the bike feels soft. I don't know, for me, I'm 180 pounds, 6'1", and I think a little bit of the conditions had something to do with that. The track's pretty deep and soft. There's a bunch of mulch and things like that. And we're also falling out of the sky, 30 feet up, landing on the flat ground, trying to jump some of these jumps. So I think that has something to do with it. There's a really deep sand section over here by the finish line. And I felt like the bike was maybe a little bit lower in the stroke. What I did too is I dropped the forks just a tad and then went one click in on compression just to stiffen it up a little bit. And after that, I felt like the bike was working better. I had a little bit more confidence in the front end and I don't know, a little bit more hold up off some of the jumps. You're coming down some of these big Godzilla step down and step up. You're landing with so much force on that front wheel and on the front end together that it does feel a little bit nose heavy, I guess. But I think a lot of guys are also gonna get their suspension done. So to me, that's not a make or break issue. I think it's something you could get away with doing with clickers. And if you're a guy who's gonna get a revalve or a spring rate up, then I don't think it's something to worry about. To me, something to worry about is the frame, or something that can't be changed, the engine internals, something like that. To me, suspension, like I said, I didn't notice it was a huge deal. The rear end felt good to me. I feel like I had traction almost all over the track, even when it was slippery. I feel like the rear wheel was biting everywhere. It leans into ruts easy. And yeah, I just had a blast on this bike today. I think the evolution of the Honda 450 is, went from being a raw, fast, crazy bike to ride, and now it's a lot smoother, more refined. And I think it has a lot to do with the race team. You look at Jet and Hunter, they aren't somebody who rev the crap out of their bikes. They don't ride it way up high in the RPM like a Barsha or somebody, for instance. They ride it really smooth, really controlled, and I think you're gonna see a lot of that translate over to the production bike. It's cool to hear them and see, Chance was riding the 450 today, Hunter was riding the 450 today, the new one, the 2025, and it's cool to see their input on what the bike feels like for them, and how starting with such a good base platform really benefits the race team and what they can start with. So yeah, I think it's cool to see that Honda is using the race team and using just the resources to talk back and forth, so we as consumers get a bike that's race tested and has parts and contributions that came from the factory guys.
Hey guys, Hunter Lawrence here. We're here at Ironman Raceway for the new CRF450 2025 launch. A lot of people would be surprised with how much we've been pushing the stock bike to be more like the factory bike. In what ways? The ways of just easy rideability. We want linear throttle, linear power curve, just to be able to ride it for longer, enjoy it longer, not have it beat you up on the track and just be a handful to hold on to. So yeah, it's obviously we ride the stock bike all the time, and obviously what the race team, the factory team, has to build the factory bike off is based on the stock platform. So having a great stock platform really does help us and make the factory team's job a lot easier. And there was a huge difference between the factory and the stock bike in just characteristics of handling, power, all that stuff. And we were like, hey, we think it should be the opposite way. We think the factory bike should be what the stock bike is, for the people, because the factory bike was a lot easier to ride, a lot more fun. It was more, the power was way more usable. You could use all the power band and power range. And so that's what we've really pushed for on that, and I think they've nailed it. The characteristics of this new chassis, a way bigger window to be happy, right? The other one was definitely, the previous model's definitely a little more sensitive, and the window's a little smaller. I think you're in a really good place with this new bike, and yeah, that connectivity, mapping, ECU, the ECU really, it sounds silly, but it has a massive impact on the 450, more so than the 250, and we only learned that when we went from 250 to 450, and wow, this thing controls and really is responsible for a lot of the characteristics of how it handles, how it behaves on track and stuff like that. So that's a huge impact on the bike, and I think we've really improved the whole package. All right, so kind of to wrap things up, Honda 450, 70% new. Most of that's going to be the new frame. I think if you guys are jumping from the 21 to the 24 450, I think you're gonna feel pretty similar. The seat, the handlebars, even the cockpit itself feels pretty similar. The shrouds are a little bit different. I feel like they kind of have like a retro feel to them. They're growing on me. I think once we get some graphics on it, it'll look a little better, fill up some of that dead space. But I think you'll be comfortable jumping from the previous generation to this generation. It's not a huge change. Maybe like something like the new Yamahas, where they went from all new, totally different. If you're a Honda guy and you are familiar with that platform, I think that's a good thing for those guys. But overall, just more refined, cleaner. One thing with the ECU and the engine, I didn't notice that, or I noticed it was flaring out or flaming out less. On the old bike, I feel like I'd come into a turn and maybe I'd be a gear too high and it would just stall on me. And this bike, I never had that once today. So that was something that was cool. Just cleaner, more refined. Yeah, it's a good package, and I'm excited to get it back home in some home conditions and put some more time on this thing. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching 2025 Honda CRF450R. If you like what you see, drop a like, follow, subscribe. We really appreciate it. It helps keep us going. And check out the Cycle News magazine, available for free at cyclenews.com. Comes out every Monday night. We have a ton of free stuff in there with photos, race reports, bike tests like this one, and a whole lot more. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.